All right, we are back for a Sunday evening episode of the Stronger Together podcast experience. And it has been a great week of guests from authors to speakers and just people that inspire me each and every day. And that's why I think I've been looking forward to this episode as soon as I knew that it was going to work out, because the person we're going to bring on today is someone who I actually met and known less than 2 years, but someone who has brought joy and just inspiration to my life. And I cannot wait to share some of all of her great work with you and have her talk about it, because it's somebody who, when you get a chance to see the work that she does, it's just so practical, so inspiring, and it runs the gamut. And she actually is not only a friend of mine, she is the editor of my first Codebreaker book. And I know for a fact that that book would not be what it is without all her efforts and care and love for the work. And I can't wait for you to get a chance to meet her. So we're going to bring Daphne in right now to talk about all the great things that she is doing. And she is going crazy with all the work and presenting and speaking and writing that she's doing. So Daphne, welcome to the Stronger Together experience.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you on this Sunday evening?
I'm good. I'm going to try not to yawn. It is Sunday night. It's time
It
for
is
me
Sunday
to
night,
wrap up
and
life.
rumor has it you were skating today, so you must be
I was
tired.
skating. Not
Were
well,
you
but I was
personally
skating.
skating?
Did I? Yeah.
Okay.
But so here's the problem. So I'm a goalie on my team. Goalies don't skate. Goalies stand still.
Okay.
Goalies slide side to side. So putting on regular skates instead of goalie skates and trying to do laps around a rink is very different. It's like Bambi on skates is how I looked.
Nice.
It was
Bambi
fun.
on skates. That's a new one.
Yeah, it was
Graceful?
very, very,
Can you
as
do
you would
tricks?
imagine. Can I do tricks? And
Yeah.
I can stay upright. I think that's
Okay, that
a
is
pretty
quite
good
a trick.
goal to to attempt to keep that stride. It works. So
Wonderful. So for those of our viewers and listeners who don't know Daphne, tell us your story.
oh God, tell me my story. Okay, well, I'm a teacher. First and foremost, I've been teaching this is my 18th year in education. I teach little people. I teach this year. I teach first grade. About 3 years ago now, I had been following Brian Aspinall on social media. He was a huge Canadian educator here, and he was really big into technology integration, and so was I. So I was following him through Twitter and his other social channels and YouTube and whatnot. And eventually, through a mutual colleague, I got a chance to meet him. And virtually anyway, he had reached out after a conference that I was at with a mutual colleague of ours. And he reached out after speaking to that colleague about something that had happened at the conference, and he asked if I wanted to write a blog for his website. So I said yes. I was super excited. So I did that. And then not much later, a couple months later, I guess, he reached out again and said that he was getting into the publishing space. So I had read both of his books up till that point. He'd had out Codebreaker and Blockbreaker. And he said he was moving into the publishing space with kids' books. So he asked if that was something I'd ever wanted to do. And it was. I just didn't really know what that looked like or how to do it. And what I said to him was literally, I just don't know where to start. And he said, you just start. And
that makes a lot of sense.
There it is. You just start. And literally 3 words changed my life in that moment. So I started writing. I knew exactly what I wanted to write. I wanted to write about a little girl. I wanted to write about coding and robotics. And I wanted it to be a series. I knew from the get-go that I wanted to build a character that kids could get to know, and that she could go on little adventures and hopefully teach kids along the way something about themselves. And so Gracie is about a little girl who's sort of bored at school until her teacher teaches her how to code. And then her sort of life kind of opens up a little bit at school, and school becomes a place where she really loves to be. And Gracie is based on a handful of students that I was teaching that year that Brian reached out. And then as I was sort of going through the Gracie process and writing, I started informally kind of doing some editing for another project that Brian was working on. And then that informal kind of process turned a little bit more formal as we went along. And then eventually that was the role that I took on officially, was editor for Codebreaker. And then I moved into doing more things for Codebreaker and with Brian. And, alongside of us being colleagues and partners in Codebreaker, he was really a huge mentor, and he really helped me to, look at consulting and speaking and where to kind of take my journey that way. So I started doing that along the way as well. And that's kind of, between then and now, I've written 3 Gracie books, and you and I collaborated with Brian and Christine on another book, that we call a leadership book on Disrupt the Status Quo. And I'm still very big part of Codebreaker as the managing director. And hopefully another Gracie book is in the works. It's in here. There's a few words on paper. I just need to keep going. And my eventual goal is to write my own leadership book about, my journey and, where I've been, where I've come from as an educator, and how different big moments of my life have sort of unraveled to allow me to be in the place that I am today. So that's
a lot to unpack there. That is amazing. I think it's just, to hear you talk it through and to hear you share some of that, it just spans so many different things. So, you talked about Gracie. Gracie even has her own website. She has her own. She has her own clothes. I mean, check her out.
She does.
Right? She's looking good.
She
so
is.
that is Gracie, and I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit about Gracie and a little bit, because she has her own, besides Twitter account, her own personality and her own look. So tell us about Gracie.
So Gracie was modeled after, so first of all, Gracie's a girl because I'm a girl and because I have a little girl, and I needed
even her own website. Check it out.
She has her own website.
Gracie, go for it.
I needed to have a space to have for little girls to be able to be empowered. I wanted that was my goal, was to empower little girls and not to exclude anybody else. But when we often think of technology and STEM learning and, video games and computers and all of that sort of stuff that kind of gets, encompassed into one, we often think about boys. Now, I can say with honesty, that's definitely changing. When I was a kid, though, boys played video games, girls didn't. I love playing video games. I grew up playing video games. I have an older brother, and that's what we did. I loved playing. We had robots when I was a kid that I played with. I loved doing all that stuff. I loved everything about technology and STEM learning. And so I wanted it to be about a little girl but the story is about a little girl, but it has nothing to do with the fact that she is a girl. The story is about a young person. And my hope was that because she was a girl, somebody could see themselves in her as a learner that she is. And if they happen to be a little girl, amazing. If not, well, you know what, just as well for that too. So her character was based on 4 students that I had taught who were sort of disinterested in school and just kind of going to school because that's just what we did. And then when I had introduced, that sort of level of technology into my classroom, coding and robotics, things really started to change for those students. And that's where Gracie came from. The story itself has its own sort of Easter eggs behind it. So the robot in the story named GoBot was actually drawn by my daughter. I just said, hey, go draw this. And I gave that picture to the illustrator. Gracie is a redhead because my daughter has this tiny little friend who he is just a firecracker, and he sort of, marches to the beat of his own drum, and he is
like somebody else I know, I think.
Exactly. And he is a redhead. So that's why Gracie's a redhead. She's got curly wild hair because I have curly wild hair. And there's little bits and pieces throughout the story that are just kind of just a kick for, little Easter egg for bits and pieces in my life. The characters are named, the one character is named Riley. That's my daughter's middle name. The robot that shows up at the end of the story is a replica robot that I used to play with as a kid with my brother. So it was sort of my little, way to honor him. So there's, that's a really fun part of writing a story, is how much of your own life you get to put in there without anybody really knowing. And then, I really wanted her to become a series because I love the idea of kids falling in love with a character. And
Sure.
it doesn't matter what the book is, they just want to read more about that character. And so Gracie has three books, two of which are fiction stories. And then the second book I actually wrote with Brian, and it is nonfiction and talks about, it's called What Happens When I Learn to Code. And that's exactly what it talks about.
And like, I see you light up when you talk about it. I see you get excited, and it's really great to see. And I'm really, proud of you because I just really want the best for you. What's it like when you walk into an event and you see this? Not only is the character there, people are wearing the shirt. Tell me what that's like for you.
Okay, so I don't know if there's really words. I just, so I was in Iowa last weekend. I was the feature speaker at the iTech conference in Des Moines, Iowa. And on the Sunday night, I was walking through the hotel and figured, hey, I should probably find out where the event space is. So tomorrow morning, I'm not lost.
Figure this out.
Running around in a dress and high heels looking for a room I'm supposed to be in. So on the Sunday night, I kind of wandered through the hotel to find the space. And I walked into a hallway where I saw people setting up. So I found the person who had from CSTA Iowa, who I'd been chatting with. And so we were just kind of touching base. And then peripherally, I see this person walk by, and she, in one of the photos there, she was wearing she was wearing a Gracie shirt, which she actually got from Lori, who was the person on the right.
Right. So you're wearing two different outfits. So this is two different days. Somebody's rocking Gracie.
Yeah. Yeah. The left was the Sunday night. The right was the event. So yeah, I don't really have words, to be honest. Gracie was published in December of 2019, the first Gracie book. And, right from the get-go, I wanted her to be her own brand. I wanted her to be her own thing. I wanted her to be sort of a name that people knew. And she's becoming that. She is in smaller spaces. She's a big name. And I want to keep growing that to bigger spaces, because I think everything that the idea of Gracie stands for is really, really important. It's showing our kids that our youngest learners can do whatever they want to do. And it's, hopefully inspiring people to be more innovative and, to teach and lead from a place of discovery and exploration, because I think that is what our kids need.
And I hear you talk about Gracie, and it's almost like a parallel to me, because I hear you talk about her and the character and her kind of growing and becoming her own person and becoming a brand. Well, it's almost like you're talking about yourself. Like you were just in Iowa, and this is you now. So you started off, as you were saying, like a book in your idea, and now you are the first featured speaker, right? Is that correct, for this Iowa Tech Conference? So tell us. I
was the first computer science featured speaker, and that in itself is a huge deal for me because I'm female. So not only was I the first computer science featured speaker, but I was also the first female computer science featured speaker. And I think that that's a really, really big deal. My whole life growing up, so my brother and I are 6 years apart, and I was his shadow growing up. And so I did whatever he did. So we played a lot of video games, and I played a lot of sports, and I did all of those things. And I was called forever a tomboy. And I hate that label. And I hate that label because people said it as though there was something wrong with that.
Right.
And, and even growing up, my mother desperately wanted me to put on like a pink tutu and do gymnastics. And
oh my God, I couldn't see that. If you have a photo of that, just share it.
No,
we won't put it out here on the video.
That doesn't exist because, as
just
you would imagine,
as a skate hockey, like you play hockey.
Yeah, I play hockey. But at the time, she that's what she wanted, and or that's what she hoped for. In the end, she let me do whatever I want, which was pick up a baseball glove and play ball for 10 years after that. But, we have So we have something here called Girl Guides, which is like Girl Scouts.
Mhm.
And I had a bunch of friends who were part of this. And, it's a great, great program. And my mom really wanted me to be a part of it. And like I said, I had a bunch of friends. It would have been a lot of fun, but I refused to participate because the uniform was a dress and I wouldn't
Oh
wear it.
no.
Because you were a girl and that's what you wore. And so I wouldn't go because I didn't want to wear a dress. And even in high school, I went to a Catholic high school. All the girls wore kilts. I did not. I wore one on the first day of grade 9 and it never came out of the closet again because I wanted to wear pants. I wanted to be comfortable.
Right.
And that's just sort of, what I did and who I am. And, so being called a tomboy growing up, making it seem like there was something wrong with that, was problematic for me. And even, raising my little girl, her very first friends were all boys. And so when we would be at, gatherings or get-togethers or whatever, and people, typically older people would see the things that she was doing or what she was into, I would often get, "Oh, she's a tomboy." And people regretted saying that seconds after the words came out of their mouth because I think it's seen as a negative thing. And so, and for me, especially because there are no boy things and girls things. There's just
Right.
things that you do. And so, the idea of, playing video games forever when I was a kid was, well, that's what boys do. No, that's what I like to do. And there's nothing
Right.
wrong with that. So I really, really, really push the idea of being an individual, not being a girl or a boy or whatever gender you identify as, but just being you and doing what is that you want to do. I happen to really love computer science and that's what I want to do. And I love to build things and make things and and that's what I want other kids to see. If you don't love computer science, you don't have to love computer science. You just need to love something and just do it.
No.
And that's what I try and model.
And you see it in everything you do. And you talked about that the Iowa event being the first computer science feature speaker, but not only that, being the first female
Mhm.
computer science. And you said that's a big deal. Well, tell me about this big deal.
Oh,
That's
yeah, that's a
quite a
pretty big
big
deal.
deal.
That's a pretty big deal.
The 2022 Prime Minister's Award for Teacher Excellence in STEM. And then it's your name and your picture. So
Yeah,
let's talk about big deals. That's a big deal. Tell us
that's
what
a big
that's all
deal.
about.
So a couple of years ago, I was nominated by a colleague so that award is obviously it's Canada wide, and they choose a handful of people from each province to receive the award. There's the Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence and Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence in STEM. So of this year's STEM recipients, there was 17 Canada wide. So I got to be one of those 17 people, which was such a big deal. And it's, for me, it's an even bigger deal because of my love of computer science and because of my love of technology. It's something that I've been integrating into my program since, I was able to, since,
Sure.
we had those tools in the classroom. I've always taught young students, and it was hard to convince people that this type of learning was important for our students. And so as a result, there was a lot of barriers in my way. There were a lot of people who didn't see what I saw in terms of, the innovative learning that we were doing and the discovery and exploration that we were doing with technology. And a lot of people throughout my career looked at it as, they're just consuming content or they're just playing
Sure.
with robots. People didn't see, sort of the point, if you will, especially because for a long time that what I was doing in the classroom wasn't sort of listed in any of our curriculum documents. So people saw it
Right.
as doing it as an extra thing. And what, I tried to convince people of forever was it's not an extra thing. It's doing what we're doing right now in a different way. So I had a lot of very, very supportive colleagues. I can't take that away, but I also had a lot of people who didn't like what I was doing the way I was doing it. And I remember a colleague one day saw me setting up some stuff for an activity that I was doing. And there was no pencil and paper involved in the activity. And it was going to be, it was going to take a long time. She happened to walk by my classroom. She poked her head in and she just took one look at me and she said, "Wow, you must have a lot of time on your hands."
Oh, come on.
And that was a long time ago, and it's something that I remember very, very
Obviously.
clearly, as though it happened yesterday. So, to to be able to sit back and be acknowledged for something that I knew for so long was so important for our students is such a big deal to me. I love teaching. I was born and raised to be a teacher, and it's sort of what I was put on this earth to do, and I've known that forever. And so that award really, really just kind of, it was just a really, really proud moment to know that I've been working so hard, and to have it acknowledged on such a huge level, like Canada-wide, was a really, really proud moment.
Yeah.
And
So go
I'm
ahead.
super grateful. So I'm just super grateful for all of the support that, I've had to get to this point.
So you've heard a lot about what Daphne's been doing. Her website's below. We put up the Gracie information, and we'll continue to put all information up in the show notes afterwards as well. So you've talked about your work in the classroom. You've talked about your STEM education, and you talked about your Gracie series. You are now expanding out even more with so here are your 3 Gracie books, but now you have Disrupt the Status Quo. You're moving into leadership book writing. So I was fortunate enough to be one of the co-authors with you in that, but I'd love to hear your experience. One, having to deal with me and Brian. That's number one, which is almost a chore in itself. I don't know how you and
Not
Christine
almost, it
deal
is.
with. I don't know how you and Christine deal with us, but how is that moving into that style of writing? And not only that, now because you're a very, strong-willed, powerful person, now you got to weave that in with 3 other people who are all very different in our personalities.
So that style of writing was not, it's obviously very different than writing a kid's book, but in terms of, writing in general, I write a blog. And so that's, that style was similar in that regard. The hardest piece for me was the idea of being able to make it connect with 3 other voices. So I am very A-type, and I'm very like, I need things as you know. So for me to be able to envision, this product that we were putting together, this project that we were working on with 4 very, very different voices, I didn't know how that was going to work. I had to just let go. I had to just trust that it was going to work. And I mean, in the end, it did. It's such a beautiful project. I'm so, so, so proud of it. And I think for the last, I don't know, 5-6 years, I guess, maybe a little less than that. No, I would say less than that. Say maybe 4-ish years. I've kind of become different in my. First of all, I've started seeing myself as a leader. That's not something I ever saw before.
Well,
I saw myself as a classroom teacher, and I, defined leadership as an administrator, or, that your title defined you as a leader, and teachers were not. So once I started seeing myself as a leader, that changed the way my writing style was. But also I started to realize that if I'm going to write, and if I'm going to tell somebody a story, they don't want me to tell them what to do. That's not fun. What they want to hear is, or for me personally, if I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm listening to somebody talk, and they're talking to me about all of the amazing things that they're doing, and, never ever mention what went wrong, or how it failed miserably, or how much of a disaster it was, I can't relate to that, because every day of my life in my classroom, disasters ensue. That's just what happens. That's just part of education.
Right.
There's something ridiculous that happens every day, whether it could have been prevented or not. There are learning experiences in every single day. So that's what I want to hear. I want to hear when you tried something and you were super proud of it and it was a mess. But then I also need to hear what you learned from it to change that for the better, and not in a like in a relatable way, to be honest. I want to know, because we're not perfect people. So if your story is all about how perfect you are, I'm just not going to relate to you, and I'm really just not going to listen to you, because I know that it's not authentic, and I know that it's not honest. And when we're able to say, hey, this is how I screwed up, and this is where things went wrong, but here's the other side of it as well. To being able to hear both sides of that, I think, is what makes something interesting for a reader to read, but also to connect to.
Absolutely. And I mean, you and Christine gave me feedback that just changed all of my sections. Christine's feedback on my introduction section changed how I wrote that. And then
Mhm.
my sections, when you said very politely, as you always have been, like, here's a little suggestion, totally change how you're doing it. And it's like, yes, like the way you phrase it, the way you talked me through that, it was incredibly empowering and really helped me frame the work that I'm doing. And you don't just do that for me. I mean, look at all of the Codebreaker leadership books. You've been either the designer of the covers of all of these, or most of them, and the editor, correct? On probably
On most,
90% of them?
yeah, on most of those. Yeah.
Like, so how is that? So now you said, oh, I don't see myself as a leader, but yet here you are in front of people talking, there's people in the sessions, here you are editing and designing these books. What's that role like as you move into that part of your work, the editing and designing?
That piece is the designing piece is completely separate. That I love doing that. I love being able
Mm-hmm.
to read somebody's story and kind of bringing it to life with a book cover. Some people come to me with ideas, some people don't, and it's when I worked with my illustrator with writing Gracie, the first one, I had some sort of ideas of what I wanted Gracie to look like, but I didn't. That was all I had. And when she drew those illustrations, she gave Gracie a whole other life that the words in the book didn't have. And so when you put those illustrations together with the words, then it's this huge piece of artwork that didn't exist before those two things came together. So when I read, when I read these books from our authors that are coming in, I hear and see things from a different perspective. I hear and see them from the perspective of being in the classroom as a teacher,
Sure.
from being a woman, from being Canadian, from being in my 40s. Like there's a whole different perspective that I have that my authors are not going to have. Simply because of who I am and who they are, and life experiences. So when I'm reading them, ideas come to life in terms of that creative piece on what a cover could look like. But then in terms of the editing itself, I can say with honesty, there's less than a handful of people that I willingly give my writing to look at. Only two people saw Disrupt before the world saw it.
Okay.
I couldn't give, actually three. I couldn't give it to anybody else. So I'm for people to willingly give their work to me, their life's work to me, a complete stranger most of the time, I think all of the time, actually a complete stranger, to say, read it, critique it, and now it's in your hands to tell me if I, deem it good enough. That's a really, really big deal to me. I know how difficult it is for me to do that. I know that I can't do that in some ways. So I take that job very, very seriously. I think it's really, really important. I think the words that I use, the way that I speak to somebody, the way that I share my thoughts about their project could really make or break somebody. And I know that because it can do that to me. So that is a job that I take. It's not a job. That is, I don't know what the word is, but it is
A role.
it's a role. It's an honor. It's something that I take really, really seriously because somebody's giving you their, their life on paper, their story.
Sure.
And I think that it's a really brave thing to do.
Well, I know I can say it firsthand because you edited the Power Connections and designed the cover. I'm so fortunate
Mhm.
to have you do
I
that
love that cover.
and work. I do too. That Codebreaker is incredibly lucky to have you. I'd say fortunate, not lucky, because you work really hard to contribute all that you do. So we're really fortunate for your talents, for your expertise and your experiences. So I'm going to get you out on this. I asked all our guests the same question to end the interview. What does Stronger Together mean to you?
Just stronger together mean to me. I knew that question was coming and I wasn't prepared.
Come
Jeez.
on, you didn't know any of the other ones were coming, and you did
I
great.
know.
The one you knew
All
was
right. What does
coming.
it mean? I think very, very literal. I think it's the power of many and what it can do over one. I may have an opinion and an idea about something, but when there are, more minds around bringing that idea to life, I think there's power in that. I think that many perspectives on one thing can make that one thing that much better.
Well, I like that. And I know that you exude that in everything you do. So I'm so thankful that we were able to get you on. Check out Discover Gracie on Twitter. Check out Daphne's website. So many great things going on. And it's just scratching the surface. So many great things coming up. And I can't wait to continue to see you shine and continue to really impact the field as well. So thank you so much for coming on. I know it's a Sunday night, off to work tomorrow.
Yep.
And we look forward to continued collaboration. And you haven't been in any of the beginning photos or the end ones, so we're gonna have to get in a photo to put you into the
All
intro
right.
or outro.
All right.
Can I hold you to that?
Yeah, you can hold me to that.
Awesome. So thank you all for tuning in, for listening either live or on playback. And remember, we are stronger together because we put we over me.